David, do you like snakes?
Definitely not.
No, nor me. But RFK Jr., the health secretary, he's been at it again with animals, snakes this time. You seen the video?
Yes, removing southern black racers from the backyard of his advisor, Dr. Oz.
Yeah. So, what are they? Well, they were having sex, so what were they?
They're moccasins.
Moccasins? Who's a
No,
different?
they're not moccasins.
Huh?
They're not moccasins.
Oh. Nuts. Okay.
Are they biting?
Yeah.
Honey, let it go. Oh my God.
Jesus,
Bobby,
the mouths are
Bobby,
huge.
please. Bobby, please. Oh God.
Here, come. Thank you.
Yeah, it says here that the southern black racer is not venomous and that humans remain the greatest threat to black racers. Well, they're not wrong because RFK has been kicking these slithery little things out of his pal Dr. Oz's backyard.
And episodes involving RFK and animals are becoming a regular feature on Trump 100.
Yeah, they are. Bear cub, the story of there was the one with the bear cub. I think that was episode 11. So go back and listen to that if you want to.
I was taking a group of people falconing up in Goshen, New York, up in the Hudson Valley. And I was supposed to meet them there at like maybe 8 or 9. I was driving up maybe, really early, like 7. And that woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it, a young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear. And it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. And you can do that in New York State. You can get a bear tag for a roadkill bear.
There was something about a whale. What's the whale one? I've got whale written here.
I think he chopped the carcass of a whale in half after finding it on a beach and strapped it onto the roof of his car.
Oh, dear. And who can forget the slicing off of the penis of a dead raccoon?
Of course, he is from the most famous of Irish-American families. You know what Ireland's patron saint is credited with?
Tell me.
Driving the snakes out of Ireland.
Oh, well, there you go.
Maybe he thinks he's St. Patrick.
I thought you were going to say Irish people like to chop off penises of dead raccoons. I'm glad you didn't say that. Anyway, I'm Mark Stone.
And I'm David Blevins, both of us in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we are indeed.
It's a fortnight since I was in Memphis, but the race to redistrict goes on right across the country. And deeper into America's South, there are hitches in Donald Trump's plan to carve out more Republican seats. It's hit choppy waters in South Carolina and in Alabama.
And Iran. US strikes on Iran overnight on Monday, just a day after we were told that a deal was about to be struck. So what on earth is going on? But first, the president has been in hospital for a scheduled medical. He is nearly 80, and of course there are constant questions about his health. So what did the medical tell us? Let's begin with that, David. The Walter Reed Medical Center, it's up in Bethesda, just north of Washington, D.C. It is the medical center where all presidents go. I think Ronald Reagan had a big operation there many years ago. It's state-of-the-art, of course, and Donald Trump, like all those before him, goes there for regular medicals. And he went there, didn't he, over the course of the past day for his latest.
Yes, and it is a place Donald Trump talks about perhaps more than any of his predecessors ever did. I think the context is really important. He does turn 80 next month. He was the oldest person ever to be inaugurated as president of the United States. Mark, we're told we're not going to get the full readout on this medical for a day or two, but I think we can safely speculate about what it's going to say. A stable genius with the body of a god, something like that.
Something like that. I think he did reveal on Truth Social late on Tuesday afternoon. Not the full medical report, of course not. It'll take a little time for that to come. But he did say, just finished my 6-month physical at Walter Reed Medical Center. Everything checked out perfectly, capital letters, Thank you to the great doctors and staff heading back to the White House. President DJT. So there we are. He is in fine health, so we're told.
And we're told that on a fairly regular basis, usually by the president himself, but his previous physician, Dr. Ronnie Jackson.
He called him once Ronnie Johnson. He's one of his best pals, Ronnie Jackson, that is, who is he's a lawmaker on Capitol Hill as well as being a doctor. But I remember it well. He was at a rally quite a while ago now, and he kept on talking about Ronnie Johnson, and everyone was like, "Who's Ronnie Johnson?" So anyway, maybe he doesn't know him that well, but he claims to, and he is or was the doctor, wasn't he? Or is he the doctor still? Can't remember.
No, I think he has been replaced these days, but he was the man who once said Trump had incredibly good genes and could live to 200 if he wanted to. Mark, did you ever watch Catchphrase growing up on television?
I did, with Roy Walker.
You remember his own catchphrase?
No.
Say what you see.
Say what you see.
In the case of Trump's height and weight, it's a case of don't say what you see, because he's been likened in the past to athletes, which is not the impression I get when I take a look at President Trump.
He's a big boned guy. That's a generous way of describing it. I think he's a big man. There's no doubt about that. He doesn't drink. He's never touched alcohol except when he appeared to be given it in Beijing a couple of weeks ago, and winced at the champagne flute. But he does like McDonald's, doesn't he?
He does.
There's a McDonald's on 17th Street, not far from the White House, which is apparently the one that they get DoorDash from. To deliver McDonald's to the White House when he wants it. He's a big fan of McDonald's. So I don't think he's necessarily the healthiest man. That said, I would argue, and I don't know what you think, but I think he's got a lot of stamina for an 80-year-old man. I mean, we all remember what Joe Biden was like at that age. Physically, incredibly slow.
And his own team often paint him as superhuman. You get posts from people like Stephen Chung, his director of communications, telling us how he's working all hours of the day and night. And we know he rarely sleeps. He takes phone calls late at night. He posts on Truth Social incessantly through the small hours of the morning. But despite all of that, there has been a lot of public scrutiny of his health in recent months.
Yeah, and with good reason. I mean, I say that he is... he seems to have a lot of stamina. He doesn't seem to sleep very much. He seems to be working long hours. He's traveling around the world. I don't think there are that many 80-year-olds who would have the stamina that perhaps he's got, although he's got the staff at the White House and all around to make his life when he travels very easy. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there are important questions about his physical health and about his mental health. Physically, we know he's got this bruising on his hand. That has been attributed to too many handshakes and the fact that he takes aspirin. His last medical, which I've got a copy of here, talks about the swelling in his lower legs. In keeping with routine medical care and out of abundance of caution, the last medical said this concern was thoroughly evaluated by the White House medical unit, and they acknowledged that this swelling was as a consequence of a medical condition, but that it was nothing particularly serious. So physically, he is showing signs of being elderly. And then there's the mental stuff. I mean, all this, we've talked about it, the amount of times he's posting on social media, kind of nonsense through the night. I mean, are this man's mental faculties fully there? I think that's a genuine question that should be asked. Or is it that he just doesn't care? He is, maybe he doesn't sleep very well, and at night time, he's doing what lots of us do. He's scrolling on his phone and he's just finds something interesting, post. And he doesn't give a monkey's what people think. I wonder if actually that is closer to the mark.
Yeah, there is all the concern about the hands because they slap makeup on every time he makes a public appearance. There is the concern about the swelling in his feet. But as you say, Mark, it is perhaps more about his mental capacity. And he wants to be seen to be in a better mental state, perhaps, than his predecessor. How often do we hear him describing President Biden as Sleepy Joe? And yet there are also concerns because we see Donald Trump nodding off during events and meetings, or at least closing his eyes for lengthy periods during those meetings. And of course, this was his third visit to the Walter Reed Military Medical Centre in just over 3 years. Last October, they said a visit was routine, but it later emerged that he'd actually had an MRI. So there are definite questions.
So look, all we can do is trust what the physician to the president tells us and what they make public. And, again, going back to this, the last report, it talks, as you mentioned, about the bruising on the back of his hand. And it says this is consistent with minor soft tissue irritation from frequent handshaking and the use of aspirin, which is taken as part of a standard cardiovascular prevention regime. So they claim they're being very open and upfront about his health. I guess it's worth saying in a British context, the British Prime Minister, whoever that is at any particular moment, is not bound to release their medical records. They are considered private. Sometimes the cabinet will be told if the Prime Minister at the time has a particular issue. But the point I'm making is that in America, the president is required to release their medical records. And that is what the president has done in the past. And we should get the results of this latest medical test in the days ahead.
But of course, it is that attempt to be transparent that is fueling some of the concern, because in that report, they say the bruising on his hand is caused by the frequency of handshakes, and yet there is now bruising on both hands.
Yeah.
That's why people are asking questions about the health of a man who will be 80 next month. And he has a very full schedule for the rest of this year. He's hosting that big UFC fight event at the White House in June. He has the World Cup. He has midterms coming. Does he have the energy, the stamina for a big midterms campaign? Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, said earlier this year he was going to be on the road weekly in 2026 for the midterms. But that really hasn't been the case, has it?
It really hasn't. He's done, we counted it up earlier, he's done 7 campaign rallies across the country over the course of the past year. It's nearly June, and he's only done 7. And Susie Wiles, as you said he would be doing it weekly. I can't see any sign of him upping that at the moment. And even those 7 rallies, just 4 of them were in states with House seats in contention for the midterms in November. So, and actually the other thing, I was talking to someone at the weekend about this, with all the security concerns around the president, if you combine those two things, the security concerns and his age, it's really hard to see how they're going to get him out and about every single week between now and the midterms. I just cannot see it happening. Now, David, away from Washington and back to a story that you know very well, redistricting. You were in Memphis a couple of weeks ago, and 2 states have been in the news today about their plans to redistrict. And both bits of news not good for Donald Trump.
Not good at all, of course. Important perhaps to remind people that redistricting is the process by which they redraw congressional boundaries ahead of elections. And the news from Alabama today will be disappointing for the White House. A federal court there blocked Republicans from implementing their preferred House map ahead of this year's midterms. That potentially would have given Republicans an extra seat, much like in Tennessee, and the Supreme Court has pushed it through in Tennessee.
Yeah, Alabama has 2 Democrat seats. Both are also seats where the majority of voters are black. And now the Republican-led Alabama state government wants to revert to an old map that would see one of those 2 black majority Democrat seats eliminated. The federal court said that this change to the map would be a, quote, districting plan tainted by intentional race-based discrimination, the same accusation levelled in Memphis and in Tennessee.
Mark, you'll remember when we were in Tennessee, we spoke to people from the African-American community who couldn't believe really they were fighting for the same fundamental voting rights that their parents and grandparents had fought for. It's a place synonymous with civil rights, not least because Memphis was the place where Martin Luther King was assassinated. Alabama, of course, is another place in the Deep South associated with civil rights. The Montgomery bus protest, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat there. The Birmingham protests, all those images of police brutality that went around the world. The Selma to Montgomery marches, where Martin Luther King and John Lewis led the campaign for voting rights. So it's quite extraordinary that these debates are taking place in these places 60 years later.
Yeah, or maybe it's not that extraordinary. Maybe it's a depressing repeat of history. It isn't over, though, with Alabama and redistricting. The Republicans said they would immediately appeal the decision back to the Supreme Court up here in Washington, D.C., the highest court in the land. And remember, that Supreme Court has previously ruled in favour of the Republicans on this very issue. Alabama's governor is delaying primaries in affected districts to wait to see who should vote in the primaries before having them.
It all feels very rushed, doesn't it, Mark, to try and capture Republican seats, Trump pushing to try and make all of this happen before the midterms so that his party can hold on to control of the House. Elsewhere in South Carolina, though, Trump's plans were held up in a slightly different way.
Yeah, this time from his own party. The Republican-led state Senate voted against a new congressional map. The measure had been approved by the state House, but early voting began in the state for statewide primaries, and senators said now that the voting had started, the constituency boundaries couldn't be changed.
I think this is quite interesting in terms of a more bipartisan approach to this issue. South Carolinian Republicans had been less than enthusiastic about pushing through new maps earlier this year. Republicans are stronger when the Democratic Party is vibrant and viable, the Conservative top state Senator Shane Massey said. But after pressure from the White House, the Governor Henry McMaster pushed a measure back onto lawmakers, but to no avail. So at least they seem to be attempting to find some middle ground.
Yeah, I think, that this whole gerrymandering thing, that is the process by which boundaries are changed. It's been going on for a very, very long time. This attempt, though, or this series of attempts that we've seen appears to be perhaps the most blatant form of gerrymandering. And you have to wonder whether, as you were just discussing in South Carolina, whether this is just going to be too much for people and there will be a real backlash to what both sides now appear to be trying to do in order to make sure they win in the midterms in November.
Yes, because until this process began, Democrats only had to flip one seat in the House in November to take control of the House of Representatives. Now they're going to have to flip many seats. So you can see why Trump and the Republican Party are pushing so hard and gerrymandering. Less than 6 months from the midterm elections.
Now, David, I escaped for the weekend to California. I went to the Universal Studios with my family. Have you been?
Yes, I have. A long time ago, 2017, our last big family trip before my kids all flew the nest.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Full disclosure, Universal Studios is owned by Comcast, also owns Sky News. But that notwithstanding, I will say that it is well worth a visit. Fantastic. Anyway, the reason I brought that up is because while I was down in California, I obviously saw the news that Trump was saying he got a deal on Iran. I thought, oh my God, I've missed another big story. What's going to happen? Turns out I didn't miss anything, did I? Because as ever, something massive happens and then within a day, it's been contradicted by something else. And we thought there was a deal. And then Donald Trump, the man who'd been telling the Iranians to hurry up and get a deal, then said, no, we're going to take our time. And then a day later, he's bombing Iran again.
Yeah, trying to figure it all out and analyse it all sent you up the Hollywood Hills. But with 3 negotiating positions in the space of 3 days at the weekend, Mark. On Saturday, he said close to a deal. On Sunday, he said, I've told negotiators not to rush, but to get it right. And by yesterday morning, he was telling us it's going to be the greatest deal ever done, or there's going to be a resumption of the war. So he had reduced the chances to 50-50.
And then by the time we woke up, they were bombing targets in and near the Strait of Hormuz. We're told this is kind of deja vu from a few weeks ago, but we're told this is not a resumption of the war and that it is defensive measures by the Americans. Nevertheless, it's becoming increasingly hard to try and analyse what's going on, isn't it?
I think we have two very confusing pictures. One from the war zone itself, where the US Central Command is claiming these were defensive measures. The Iranians are claiming this was a blatant violation of the ceasefire that won't go unanswered. Of course, the Americans might have been just firing a warning shot in a way, showing Iran what's going to happen if there isn't a deal. The danger with that is that the ceasefire could collapse. And then the other confusing picture is from the negotiation itself, because now we're hearing from Tehran that they're not going to agree a deal until Washington releases $24 billion in frozen assets. Why does that matter? Yesterday, they said they were close to a deal on a 60-day ceasefire and on reopening the Strait of Hormuz and on setting a timetable for discussion about tricky issues like nuclear capability and economic sanctions. If economic sanctions have now become a red line, then I don't know how we can be anywhere near one word or one sentence from a deal, as Marco Rubio appeared to be suggesting. And aptly, he suggested it on an aeroplane, because we're in the holding pattern forever, it seems.
Yeah, you're right. And the deal that they appear to be closing in on, if they do, does not look to be any better. In fact, in many ways, it looks decidedly worse than the deal that Obama struck, which Trump ripped up in his first term. And by the way, the other issue, even if they manage to solve or sign a deal in Iran, is Lebanon and Gaza, because we can tell you that in the last couple of minutes, the Israeli Prime Minister has spoken to the US President Donald Trump. And we are also getting news that the Israelis have attempted, or maybe even have assassinated, the new leader of the military wing of Hamas in Gaza. So a resumption of sorts, perhaps, of the war down there. And at the same time, the Israelis saying they are going to move further north, deeper into Lebanon, in order to eliminate, or to continue to eliminate, the Hezbollah fighters that are there. So it looks possible, perhaps even probable, that two old fronts that had been somewhat contained may be reigniting just at the moment where Donald Trump thinks he may have got a deal on Iran. What a mess.
So once more we go round and around in circles. While you were quoting what's being said by Israel, the President of the United States has posted on Truth Social a very lengthy postmark. If Iran surrenders, admits their navy is gone and resting at the bottom of the sea, and their air force is no longer with us, and if their entire military walks out of Tehran, weapons dropped and hands held high, each shouting, I surrender, while wildly waving the representative white flag, and if their entire remaining leadership signs all necessary documents of surrender and admit their defeat to the great power and force of the magnificent USA, the failing New York Times, the China Street Journal, that's the Wall Street Journal, corrupt and now irrelevant CNN, and all other members of the fake news media will headline that Iran had a masterful and brilliant victory over the United States. It wasn't even close. The Democrats, as he's taken to calling them, and media have totally lost their way. They have gone absolutely crazy. A lot of ifs in that postmark.
Maybe I'll take back what I said about 10 minutes ago, that Trump isn't going mad and is in fact just not caring what he writes, because that post there seems to me to be absolutely mad. But then maybe I am one of the media that's totally lost my way and gone absolutely crazy. Let's see what he says tomorrow.
All in one sentence, quite a sentence. And the grammar is questionable, to say the least. Thanks for listening and watching. Questions and comments, as ever, to the usual place.
Trump100 at sky.uk. We will be back on Friday.
Bye-bye.